Glenray, located on the main line between Coffs Harbour and Grafton, was the junction for a 43-mile railway that worked its way up the Great Dividing Range to the township of Dorrigo. Construction began in the mid-1910s, and it saw 700 men and a decade of labour to fully complete the line. Throughout its life, the railway gained a reputation for the large amount of money that was needed to maintain it. One of the major obstacles was landslips, plus bushfires, high rainfall, amongst other things. One of the common locomotive types on the railway was the Z19 class, of which 4 have survived past the end of revenue-earning steam on the railways of New South Wales. Another regular was the standard goods type, which proved to be a solid and reliable performer. Whilst the footage presented here is not on the Dorrigo Railway, 5367 named Rosie gives a perfect representation of the D50 class, which saw service on the branch line. Well over 200 examples of the standard goods engines were constructed, and they could be found all over the state. Due to the high costs involved in maintaining the branch, it was decided to close it in the 1970s, and eventually a preservation group would begin the monumental task of reactivating the railway. Eventually, 2 separate groups came about in later years, and the section we will focus on in this production runs between the junction with the main line at Glenray to Lowanna. Heading towards Timbertop, we pass the unique tunnels, which have only been accessible in the last 20 years or so by walking groups undertaken by the now dissolved Glenray Mountain Railway. On the morning of the 26th of February 2025, we explored this section of the railway just down from the siding at Timbertop and a short distance away from a major landslip. The rails and sleepers had only been cleared about 2 or 3 weeks prior to our visit, and already the bush was growing back. Notice how the tree trunk has pushed the rails in to create a narrow gauge appearance. Timbertop was officially opened in December 1924, and it eventually consisted of a loop which could accommodate 2 trains passing each other, plus a signal box and crane on the platform for the loading of timber onto railway wagons. At the site of the road crossing a short distance from where the photos were taken, it's hard to believe a railway line exists here. Another scenic feature on the line are the trestle bridges, which last saw a steam train crossing them way back in the 1980s. Sadly, due to a lack of maintenance over the years and the consistent weather patterns that the area is known for, they have deteriorated badly, but still make for a fine sight in 2025. Discussions are underway to run the rail trail around them to avoid crossing the structures due to their condition and the amount of money it will cost to upgrade them. Back in steam days, various enthusiast specials were run, such as this one by the New South Wales Rail Transport Museum with standard goods type locomotive number 5088. This trip would terminate at Dorrigo, where the loco would be turned in readiness for the run back down to the junction at Glenray. 5088 was cut up many years ago, but thankfully a number of its sister engines survived into preservation. Another stopping point on the railway that we were unable to get to during this visit was Moulton. In steam days, this consisted of a siding, platform and shelter. Lowanna, located roughly around 33 kilometres from Glenray, features the beautifully restored station building, which once saw the use of rail trike rides that were operated by the GMR for a number of years until around the time of the COVID pandemic. Lowanna was opened in December 1924 and was the largest intermediate station on the line and the only one that was attended. The historic station would play host to the rail trail, and it would continue towards the midway point on the branch to Yulong. However, access to the former station and yard has proved to be challenging, so it is possible that the trail will branch away from the railway to another location in the area where it will terminate. Back down at Glenray, the main line is still active with freight traffic and the occasional passenger train such as the XPT. Today, the station building has deteriorated badly, and the once distinctive water tower from steam days also disappeared in the early 2020s due to a number of factors. One of the interesting features left over from the steam era is the old semaphore signal. Once a common sight around New South Wales and Australia-wide, many of these classic items of railway infrastructure are now lovingly preserved by private collectors and, of course, heritage railways and museums. The first bridge crossing on the branch is this girder structure just out of the junction at Glenray. This is the only one of its type on the branch. In 2025 it is still in place, and with some maintenance work it could be brought back into service. These photos were recorded by the State Rail Authority before the line was leased to one of the preservation groups at the time. The weeds are noticeably growing up due to a lack of maintenance between the final train and the volunteer heritage group taking over the entire branch at the time. 5088 is seen crossing the bridge during the RTM tour in the final years of steam on the government railway system. The last example of the D50 class to run under its own steam between Glenray and Lowanna was 5069 in the mid-1980s. Tallowood Ventures steam locomotive number 1919 spent some time on the branch, having been based at Grafton in the 1950s. It was operated by the now dissolved Glenray Mountain Railway until 2008, when the final service ran. All assets from the GMR were passed over to the newly formed Tallowood Ventures in 2023, and in 2024 the new group was awarded a grant of $44,700 from Fire to Flourish to continue restoring the locomotive to full working order.